All right, guys, we are live. This is the Shillin' and Duffy recap show on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and, of course, on the Sherdog Podcast Network, live on YouTube. We thank you guys for watching. We ask that you guys stay active in the comments. We'll try to make this as interactive as possible. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillin. I'm a writer for Sherdog.com. Joining me, as always, is, of course, one of the top guys at Sherdog. He is, of course, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on, my man?
Man, what a night.
That's it? That's the best you can give me?
I assume anybody watching right now just finished watching the same card we did. If you've watched us before, you know we're going to give this card a letter grade at the end. Sherdog Associate Editor Jay Petrie has already lobbed us a question, which I am going to propose we address at that time, which is, this is the worst UFC card since blank.
UFC 33? I don't know. It's been a long time.
I'm not ready to go quite that far, but
I will say this. This is the worst card we've recapped.
Yeah.
And we've probably recapped... we've recapped quite a few, probably close to 50 or so.
I'm looking back right now at my nearest competitor candidate to it to see if you and I recapped it, and we did not. So, okay, I've got my answer to the bonus question at the end.
Okay. Let's do this. Guys, in the chat, do us a favor. One, give us the grade of how you score, letter grade, A, B, C, D, F, whatever. Also, tell us what is a card that is worse than this one? All right.
And by the way, if you disagree, if you think this was a great card or just wasn't that bad, let us know. Let us have it. If I'm overreacting when I say, ugh, this sucked, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you're one of the judges, I don't know, do the judges get paid by card they have to submit? Like, this might be a good card for them, as every fight but one, I believe, went to the judges' scorecard. Let's get right into it. The main event last week, we had a heavyweight clash between Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades. That fight ended in one of the most spectacular knockouts in UFC history. One of the knockout of the year candidate, early knockout of the year candidate, in Derek Lewis. We were hoping to have it 2 in a row to kind of have something like that, and we did not get that. I believe we might have had more phones ringing than Jairzinho Rozenstruik landed punches, as Ciryl Gane blanked him 50-45 on all three judges' scorecard. I'm assuming that there's really no other way to score this fight. It's pretty clear that Gane won every round, but not, he didn't run away with his own offense to get 10-8s. There's no other way to score this. I mean, I guess maybe you could throw a 10-10 round in there. I don't know. I don't even know where to start with this, so I'm going to give Ciryl Gane a pass. Okay? I mean, he won significantly. This is, on paper, his best win. It was his first headline. He was, he obviously showed his ability to go 25 minutes. He's also learning on the job. I mean, this guy's fought professionally the first time just over 2.5 years ago. Am I being too nice to him? Like, even though he won and he kind of took what Rozenstruik gave him, should I be more critical? Like, should I have demanded that he do more?
No, I'm glad that you led off that way. Well, actually, I'm not glad, because this show would be more exciting if we disagreed. But I'm going to more than give him a pass here. Yeah, this fight sucked to watch. There was an element of suspense because, I mean, how much do you remember of the Overeem Rozenstruik fight? That was completely forgettable.
Sure.
Until the last 15 seconds. And because of that, there was the element of suspense. Okay, Rozenstruik could explode at any moment with his fight-changing power, but once that final horn sounded and it didn't happen, then you sit back and you go, okay, that is 29 minutes of my life that I'm not going to get back. That sucked. But I can't blame it on Gane. One, he attempted 11 or 12 takedowns. And if he had managed to secure a takedown, I think he could have ended this fight.
Yeah.
Rozenstruik is no great chop on the ground, and Gane is. So he tried repeatedly for what would have been his best and most direct route to victory. Number two, yeah, they spent a lot of time standing and staring at each other, but when they did strike, Gane went first every single time. You can't sit there waiting to counter without feinting or moving like Rozenstruik did. It looked like Yoel Romero versus Israel Adesanya. Gane went first, landed his jab, got back out of range. If he can beat the other man with nothing but a jab, that's not on him.
Yeah. So I agree. This fight was not entertaining, and neither was the Overeem versus Rozenstruik fight. But I think the Overeem Rozenstruik fight was like 3 times more action, 4 times more action than this one was.
It was better. It was better than this. Yes.
Yeah, this one was tough. I don't really blame Gane for it, like you said. He took what Rozenstruik gave him. I think about it like a football game where if the defense is every time you hand the ball off, you get 5 yards. Just keep handing the ball off. It might not be the most entertaining, but it is what it is. If you're in the other team's field and you're in field goal range, sometimes you got to kick the field goal. And if you win 9-0, you win 9-0. You win 15-0. That's what I felt like. I felt like 5 field goals was kicked. 5 field goals to nothing. Let me ask you this. And obviously this is unfair. You're not him, but what do you think was going through Rozenstruik's mind during this fight? Like what could he have possibly been thinking?
I think he gave away the first 2 rounds.
I think he gave away all 5 rounds.
It's not like he ever had a huge sense of urgency even by the end, but the first 2 rounds in particular, and I am always going to hesitate and qualify when I say something like this about a fighter, because I'm not the guy standing in front of Ciryl Gane, with someone on his couch telling me, dude, just jump in there and hit him. But yeah, I don't know if he's hesitant because now he has been knocked out and he's facing another guy that theoretically could just put one solid shot on his ear and put him away. But by the 3rd round, he had to know that he was losing the fight. Yeah. He had to know he was losing the fight. And even the most unrealistic fighter, and a lot of fighters are unrealistic about their own skill sets and their own prospects, he had to know there was only one way he was going to win this fight. And it was by landing a single monstrous shot that changed the momentum of the fight. And 3rd through 5th rounds, I thought he tried more often for that kind of thing. He did seem to be trying to get Gane to run into a big shot. It just didn't work. Gane was too smart and too big and too quick. Yeah, no, I understand. So he had that kind of Tyron Woodley strategy, the one that, bad Tyron Woodley, what we've been talking about a lot, where you're trying to land the perfect shot, but you're also not throwing it enough, not giving yourself enough options. You have a very small window of winning, and then you're giving yourself even lesser, chances. I think about it like if I took a basket and put it in the middle of my yard, and I was say 50 feet away from it, and I said hit a golf ball into that basket, it's very unlikely. But if I have one golf ball, it's extremely unlikely. If I have 50 golf balls, I have a much better chance of getting one in. Sure. That's kind of how I felt like this. This is twice now where we've seen him in high caliber fights that he has been. Well, I mean, really 3 if you really want to go with Overeem as not a good performance either. Kind of saved at the end. He has not looked good, and this is really surprising for some guy who has as much kickboxing experience that he has to kind of be completely gun shy. Yeah.
Let's talk about Gane, because Gane, he's so different than anybody we have at heavyweight, because we have, historically speaking, even now, we talked about last week that we think it's a pretty good division right now at heavyweight. It's got some star power with obviously Miocic, possibly the greatest of all time. John Jones moving up, who in my opinion is the greatest fighter of all time. There's a lot of star power in this, but nobody's like Gane in the fact that everyone's grizzled veteran. I know there's some new blood, but even the guys like Dawkins and Aspinall, who we saw last week, have a lot more cage time than we've seen Gane. So he gets a little past, but his athleticism, like there was, even though this was not a fun fight to watch, there was definitely some good moments. Like there was good things that you could take from the fight. Like, as they mentioned, like he's just a big dude. He's just a massively big dude. He's got a lot of muscle. Obviously, he's gonna hit hard. He's light on his feet. I like that he was able to attack both high and low, kind of changing up his attacks. While the wrestling wasn't successful, I like seeing him attempt to go, for takedowns. At one point, he actually like threw Rosenstruck and almost like did like the old bully in the yard, like rear naked choke, where you kind of sneak up by the eye and just like yoke him up, kind of.
And the throw, I mean, I won't repeat the name of it, but it was Tim Boach tossing David Heath. Like the hip throw without the hip. Just I'm strong enough that I'm just gonna grab an underhook and kind of toss you.
Yeah, his footwork, like the thing that kind of stood out to me is probably his footwork. As we talked about, that Rosenstruck kind of had these moments where he had to like flurry and kind of throw these looping, almost similar punch that he caught Overeem with. It's like looping hook. He was moving out of the way. Like he didn't give the target that Overeem did, and he did it with his footwork. And there's not many guys who can probably match that speed and athleticism.
No, I would agree. I am not sure what Ciryl Gane's ceiling is. I don't know if Ciryl Gane is a future champ. I don't know if he's a future title challenger, although, I mean, at this point, he's at most maybe 2 more wins away. I will say something about him, though, and I don't say this easily, but of all the heavyweights I've ever seen in this sport, he may be more of a complete product 8 fights into his career in terms of a well-rounded skill set, poise, and confidence, and just cage IQ. The only other person I can think of that was this developed like 8 fights in was probably Cain Velasquez. I mean, Brock Lesnar had a UFC title by his 5th or 6th fight. All the way to the end of his career, he had huge holes in his game. He looked flustered when he got hit hard. His striking never truly looked smooth or natural. He always felt like a prospect, even when he was like 33 years old and trying to come back. Gane is about as complete a product as I've ever seen for a fighter with this little time in the game and this few reps, and it is just shocking. It's not safe to assume he's going to keep developing at this at this level, but if this arc continues even a little longer, he's going to be one of the greatest heavyweights of all time just on skill.
Yeah.
We still don't know how he's going to react to true adversity. And, well, look at the man he beat tonight.
Sure.
Like, until he did, we didn't know how Rosenstruck was going to look.
That's right.
After losing a fight. Now we kind of do. So that's a big question mark. But I'm already ready to call Gane the greatest heavyweight prospect ever.
Yeah, I mean, I would still go with Cain Velasquez based on he came in with tons of hype. He obviously lived up to it. We saw the finished product. He reached the mountaintop, so I would say that. But I also like the comparison when you talked about guys so young and having an impact. I like the comparison of Cain Velasquez, but I want the listeners to really listen to what we're saying. We're not saying skill-wise because they both came from different avenues where Cain Velasquez started with the wrestling background, had the wrestling, and developed the striking. Gane's doing it the opposite way. He kind of has the striking, and then the wrestling's come. The wrestling, the grappling, all that is what he really needs to improve on. Though we have seen a little bit of grappling with him, not necessarily tonight, which is a little troublesome considering when we've seen Rosenstruck taken down, he's really struggled there. So it's a little troublesome, but it was still, with trying to nitpick a performance, he still beat a top 10 heavyweight in the world, 50-45, Yep. Do you feel, like you saying he's so you still feel good about him? Like, I want to ask this to the listeners, do you feel better about Gane after this performance, or do you feel like worse? Do you think like the fact that he didn't take him out, that he kind of played it safe, do you think he's, do you not, I shouldn't say worse in, like, I'm not talking about your fandom. Like, I was a fan of him, but now I'm not really a fan. I mean, like, just his potential. Like, do you think, I thought he would reach this level, maybe he's not that level. Like, did that change at all? Or are you still on the boat? Like, you're riding the train. You think he could win the title, or maybe you never thought he could win the title. Like, did your opinion of him change at all? It seems like to me that yours hasn't.
I have a couple of small positive takeaways.
Okay.
It is good to see that he can go 5 rounds at a moderate pace with no problem. That's encouraging. He showed that he can fight in such a way that so as to minimize his dangerous opponent's one real route to victory. He fought a fight that was clearly calculated to win each round without getting his block knocked off. It wasn't the most pleasing thing to watch, but I'm not going to call Gon a boring fighter until he does this a couple more times.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually how I feel. I feel like I'm blaming Rosenstruck more for this than Gon. If Rosenstruck came out throwing hammers, trying to make this a war, that might have changed it. Now, I'll say this about Gon. You talked about things you like. All the thing I didn't mention, I liked his fight IQ. Like he's a guy that has athleticism for days. He moves like a lightweight, but he actually showed fight IQ. He knew the avenue, what he could do to win, stuck to it, didn't like fall into any traps. That was good. Let's talk about. I really want to go back to this fight because it sucked. So I don't want to spend that much more time on it. And this is probably going to be a shorter show. We only had 9 fights after 3 canceled fights. What do we do next? What would you do next with? We'll start with Ciryl Gane. Like if you can do anything with him, who you match him with?
I would be. I don't feel comfortable giving him a huge step up after that one is the problem. That looked like the work of a guy that needs another borderline top 15 fighter at best. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing there that makes me want to see him fight Curtis Blades or see him fight even Alexander Volkov.
Yeah. So it's such a tough situation. We had a hard time last week being that it's a log jam in the top. You figure, as we already talked about, I don't want to recap it too much, but we say obviously Francis Ngannou's fighting for the title. John Jones already been promised number 2. After Derek Lewis is knockout of Curtis Blades, he might be number 3. Where's Volkov? Who's Volkov fight? So to me, there's like 3 options. You can do, or actually really 4 options. The first option is Derek Lewis. He just saw him last week. They both log jam, do that. The other one is Alexander Volkov. There between, there's 2. The third option is fight one of those also up and comers. The Chris Dawkins, Tom Aspinalls. You do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of Curtis Blades. I think Curtis Blades should be taking a step down, get a win, get back in it. So the one that I came up with, and I know by what you already said, I think you're going to hate my matchup, but I'd have him fight the loser of the title fight, the loser of Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. Like, that's what I would do.
I think that's too much for Gon right now. Or I don't hate it as a fight, but I don't think they even need to do that with him yet. Again, he's a 7-fight veteran. He's only even been training in this sport for 3.5 years. I would be fine. You mentioned 2 of the youngish heavyweights who won last week. However, the other, the guy from Moldova, Sergey Spivak.
Okay.
I don't hate Sergey because, for one thing,
more of a
Spivak
veteran.
is a guy who, and he's already he's younger than Gon.
He's young, but I'm saying more.
But he's
veteran.
had more fights. Yeah. He's already lost a couple in the UFC, so it's not like Gon is handing some fellow prospect his first UFC loss and really kicking him back down the ladder. I mean that almost looks like a step up in terms of name value for Spivak.
Oh, absolutely, it is. I mean,
Even though Spivak's the guy that's got 5 or 6 UFC fights.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't hit that one.
Wasn't Spivak's last fight? Wasn't that the opening fight?
Word from Jay Petrie. Gon said he would only fight Ngannou if they're fighting for a title. So we got some French solidarity.
Yes, because they have that teammate thing going.
Yep.
Yeah, I honestly, I know it's like a weird teammate because Francis Ngannou, he trains with Extreme Couture now, and there was the old, when they do train in France, it's like a little bit of crossover. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do that and say Francis Ngannou is the champion, and you figure by the time Gon gets himself in the title picture, hopefully we're past this coronavirus thing. Hopefully, they're back, in arenas with fans. If that's the case, and they're gonna fight each other, you do your UFC card in France. It's newly now legalized. That's what I would do. What about the next tier down? Like, what about the tier, like the kind of like the unforgotten tier, like Marcin Tybor or that range? Like, that's a step down from Rosenstruck as far as rankings and stuff. But now he's just kind of like, hey, we're gonna get you experience. Thoughts?
And that would be a good kind of person to try to get him experience against, because Tybor's, he's not an easy out. He has all the component skills. I'm all for that. That'd be fine. The thing about Gunn is there are any number of good available matchups for him because he hasn't fought anybody yet. He's been in the UFC for a year or two. He's only fought 4 times in the UFC. He's been on the way up, so he's not some dude who's already fought with half of the top 15 and either lost or won. So there are plenty of options for him without him having to take a huge step up. And anytime it's possible for the UFC to do that they don't have to rush somebody into the title picture, I prefer it. Develop your prospect. He is still a prospect. Yes, he's in Sherdog's top 10. He's in the UFC's top 10. But he doesn't need to be rushed to a title shot. He's in the top 10 because it's such a small division numerically, compared to like lightweight or welterweight.
Yeah.
Lewis called out Overeem. If that doesn't happen, Gon versus Overeem, again, I would have been happier to jump on board with this a couple fights ago for Overeem because he was that guy he was still super dangerous.
Sure.
He was still like, if you were still in prospect land, like say Romanov, he was going to put you in your place, and only the best of the best could really dominate him. But he looked so bad in that last fight. If I'm Overeem, like, do I even want to fight Srogan?
Yeah. I do think that this is a really tough situation. Like, it's not often we say that matchmakers have a hard time trying to make something that makes sense. I think this is actually one of those cases that it is actually kind of tough. I'm looking at some of the comments, and one guy, shout out to Bruce Bobtrotter, I love that name. Bruce basically is saying that Gon, there's just a paraphrase, Don probably has the ability to win the title, but he's not going to be popular. I think his performance was too tentative. It's something we might see in the future. Kind of be an unpopular heavyweight, a little safe. Maybe I try to think of like Tim Sylvia during like when he was beating Arlovsky, Jeff Munson era, like kind of like that. Obviously, I'm putting some words in Bob's mind and just like going on that. Let's go over to Rosenstruck, because it's, to me, his next fight is probably going to be on a prelim. Like, it could be a fight night prelim. Like, he's going to drop down big based on some of the performance he has. I'll go first this time. Like, what I would do with him, maybe that is like, maybe I give him one of the younger guys we just saw. Like, why not Chris Daukaus? Like, put him against Chris Daukaus. But yeah, I guess I shouldn't say in the prelim, because if he fights Chris Daukaus, he's not going to fight in the prelim. But he's probably stuck to he's not getting a main event anytime soon. That's for sure. He's
not getting a main event anytime soon, but considering that the UFC has never really gotten past the idea of putting weirdly undeserving heavyweight fights onto main cards, he might be on a main card. And the thing is, if he takes enough of a step down in competition, he's probably going to go back to knocking people the hell out. Yeah, unless we think something is permanently broken up here, which I have no reason to believe, if you give him a step down to like a top 25 guy instead of a top 10 guy, he's probably going to go back to knocking fools out. And I've not completely given up on the guy. Like, he has not been doing MMA seriously full time for very long either.
No,
I mean, his main coach is still first and foremost kind of a kickboxing coach.
Yeah.
There's no reason he couldn't develop a more well-rounded skill set. There's no reason he couldn't develop just a little better poise in the cage.
Yeah.
He didn't know what to do tonight.
Yeah, he needs to make some serious change, and maybe it's a change of scenery, maybe it's to go to a different team, maybe it's see a sports psychologist. Like, this is something that needs. He can't just do the same thing next time, have the same camp, same strategy, everything, because he's not going to win over fans. Anyways, that was main event. I don't know what I'm going to give the card yet, but for as far as the main event, I'm giving the main event an F. Like, it is as bad of a main event as we've had in a long time.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, the only thing that could have made it worse is if like they got the decision wrong, but it was so obvious that like even that they couldn't even do that. So
yeah, like these other fights that we've had bad. Like I think about like Stephen Thompson, Darren Till was kind of a boring fight. Like the very end was exciting when Darren Till dropped him, but you know there was a little bit like who's going to win. There's a little controversy, exciting. Like this was, you know, one sided. There's nothing. The co-main event was better than the main event. But it wasn't much better. Like, it wasn't a barn bird itself. I'd probably give it like a C- D itself if we're just grading. And I'm not going to do this for the entire card, throwing out grades. But in the co-main event, Magomed Ankalaev won a decision over Nikita Krylov. To me, at this point, I know what I got Nikita Krylov. He's going to be that top 10, 15 ranges fighter, and that's kind of where he's slotted in. He's going to be, you know, if you're not that level, you're going to lose to him. If you are that level, you might beat him.
I agree, although I'll say that this is as good a performance as I could have envisioned coming out of Krylov tonight.
Oh, Krylov, okay.
Yeah, out of Krylov. I predicted that just the wheels would come off at some point and Ankalaev would get the finish. But no, Krylov he fought to his best advantage throughout the fight. He just isn't as good a fighter. And what we got, I mean, it wasn't terribly exciting to watch. It would have been cooler if Ankalaev like took him down and punched his, you know, skull in the first round, or, you know, lands him with a front kick to the jaw like he did to Dalcha. But, you know, we got what we got, and second and third rounds, you know, kind of the second round was pretty one-sided. Third, I thought it was a clear Ankalaev round as well. It was just a pretty straightforward fight. Yeah, one contender goes up, one goes down.
Yeah, to me, there wasn't any suspense. Basically, it was first round was Krylov, second and third round Ankalaev. I agree with something you said about Krylov. I think he gave himself the best opportunity to win, but he has a limited skill set to Ankalaev. Like he had a good game plan. He did the opposite of Rosenstruck, where Rosenstruck really closed the window, closed his opportunity, limited the chances he had. Krylov gave himself the best opportunity. It just still wasn't enough. Now, we're both high on Ankalaev. We've both been talking this guy up. I saw some good and I saw some bad. And you tell me what you agree with, what you disagree with. The good, that he finally found that check hook. He kept throwing the check hook over and over again. And he finally found it, and he kind of rocked him with it, so he kind of shows that power. His straight left, when he was throwing it, was good. And obviously his wrestling. His wrestling is, if everything goes wrong in a fight, he can still turn into a wrestling match and win. Yes. Some of the bad I didn't like, first of all, was his output, especially in the first round. He was trying to pressure counter-strike, but he was responding too much, too slow, I should say. Krylov was like kicking him to the body or hitting him with a punch and then getting out of the range before the counter would come. And a lot of that came, and this is the other part that I thought was bad, is he was sliding back and throwing a check leg hook, which one is going to lose power, and two, when you move your head off line, you kind of will lose alignment too. What I think he's trying to do a little something like Connor does, but what the best Connor does, Israel Asani does it. It's a step back, so they step back onto their power leg, keep pulling the head just out of range to spring off that back leg to land shots. He wasn't doing that. He was pulling his whole body back, and while his upper body was going back, he was throwing basically an arm punch.
Which, I mean, I picture Nick Diaz doing that. And he would land it, but it didn't have a ton of power on it.
Honestly, that is a perfect person because he does it all the time. He actually did it against Connor a lot in the second fight, but he showed enough power still that even when I don't think it was technical, it wasn't the best technique. When he actually did land it and he landed it clean, he kind of rocked him. So that's the good. I said that my opinion of Gane didn't change much. I was high on Gane. I'm still high on Gane. My opinion of Ankalaev has not changed too much, but I am a little bit like, ugh, like that wasn't the best performance. Like, yeah, he won. He beat, a top 10 ranked guy. but I feel like so I should say my opinion has changed a little bit. Like a little bit of doubt has creeped in. Are you with me on that? Are you still like are you leading the pack that this guy's going to win the title one day?
I still think he might. But what I need to see now is I need to see him against just a real live top contender. He has been massively favored in every one of his UFC fights. Anecdotally, within the Sherdog staff, where we do a pick'em contest, he has either been the unanimous choice of the staff, which is very rare, or it's been all Ankalaev and a couple contrarian assholes trying to shoot for the moon and be the only one to pick his opponent and get it right. And aside from, again, 15 seconds against Paul Craig, he lost a round to Krylov, which I don't believe he's lost a round to anyone else in his entire UFC run. So, yeah, it looked lackluster compared to how badly he was whooping people earlier. Maybe it's just time to see this guy against one of the 7 or 8 best in the world and see how he does when he's not favored or he's a pick'em or there's a guy that actually does a couple things better than he does.
Yeah, I might have set the standard so high to him that no matter what he does, it's going to seem like a little disappointment. It's like when your friend tells you about oh, you got to see this amazing movie. I think about I might get some hate for this, but The Departed. Everyone was saying it was oh, this is the greatest movie ever. It's as good as Godfather. And I watched Departed and I'm like, it was entertaining. It wasn't the Godfather. It wasn't that level. So I kind of it seems like a disappointment to me. That's how I feel about this performance. Now you're still leading the pack. You're carrying his flag.
Let me throw out something real quick. Before this fight, Nikita Krylov's last 4 fights were Johnny Walker, Glover Teixeira, Ovett St. Preux, and Jan Blachowicz. He went 2-2 in those 4 fights, but all 4 of those guys are better than anybody Ankalaev has fought. Krylov has just been swimming in deeper waters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And perhaps Ankalaev shouldn't have been as massive a favorite as he was. He's still coming along. I mean, I don't almost by accident the UFC is developing him sensibly, and so I'm getting impatient to see him against an actual top fighter. Yeah,
I would say you're the person you're carrying the flag, you're running, with the pack following. Yep. I've fallen back of the pack a little bit, or for still in love with this guy, but I might be checking the DMs of somebody else. You know what I mean? We're still together, but my eyes are starting to, kind of starting to wander a little bit. Let's matchmake. You said you think he should face a top 7 or above kind of guy. I agree with that.
I've got a couple thoughts here.
Give me one. Give me one.
Okay.
I want you're the matchmaker. He comes in. He's gonna sign the contract. What name are you having on it?
Volkan Oezdemir was supposed to fight Krylov. He probably would have been a pick'em or a slight favorite in that. I like that for a next fight.
Okay, I'm going even higher than you. I'm
fine with that.
I'm giving him the win. I'm giving him the winner of Thiago Santos, Alexander Rakic. That's what I would do.
Okay, you told me only one because that was my other one.
Sorry. I said
the winner of Santos versus Rakic would be great as well.
Okay. Sorry, I meant don't give me multiple options, but I was going to say the winner. Okay.
Yeah.
So we both agree that's the matchup to make. They're fighting next weekend, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're fighting next weekend, so it would line up as long as obviously everyone stayed healthy. Let's move on. Probably one of the most controversial fights of the evening, or the most controversial, Montana De La Rosa versus Mayra Bueno Silva. They fought to a majority draw. My question to you is, how'd you score the fight?
I'm one of the people that scored it to draw.
So did I. Tell me exactly, because not only was how you scored the fight, 29, 28, draw, whatever, there was some controversy to that, but also it seemed like the rounds, there was some controversy. Some people gave one round to this guy, one gave this girl a round. How did you break down the rounds for me?
First round, I scored 9-9. I thought it was a round for Mayra Bueno Silva, except for the point deduction. It was a close round, but the thing is, if it was close and you thought of it the other way, all of a sudden it's a 10-8 round. I gave the second round to De La Rosa, which I think is probably the least controversial round. Everyone seemed to agree on that one. Then the last round I gave to Silva.
So not only this kind of kills our fun, but not only did we agree on the score. We actually scored the rounds the same way. So without the point deduction, then Borna Silva would win. However, do you agree with the point deduction? Because I'll say I do. Because
I
okay,
love the point deduction. My only problem is that it needs to be done more consistently that way.
I agree.
Because
you stole the words I was going to say.
Yes.
I was going to say those exact
words. If I'm
words.
Bueno Silva's corner, I'm like, what the hell? This happens literally 6 to 10 times every single UFC card, and no fence grab gets a point deduction until at least the third infraction, even if it does stop a takedown. Why am I all of a sudden in the hole? I agree with the deduction. I just think it needs to be more consistently enforced. It is a fight-changing infraction. I'm not going to call it a foul because you're not poking somebody in the eye, but it's a fight-changing infraction that happens multiple times,
absolutely
every single event. And shout outs to Chad Dundas. Dundasso starts with committing fouls on purpose that you're going to get away with a couple times without a point deduction. Like, if you can grab the fence twice, do one nut shot and an eye poke, and none of them are going to get
That's right.
deducted. Why wouldn't you do them? That's like going out with one hand tied behind your back.
See, I've always thought this. When you grab the fence and you stop a takedown, not only should you get a point deducted, they should put you on the ground. Because if I'm fighting Ryan Hall, and I'm a great striker, if I can keep the fight on the feet, I have a good chance of knocking him out. But if he takes me down, the fight's probably over. Or insert whoever, Damian Maia, whatever extremely high-level grappler. Well, I'll give up a point before I let him get a takedown. You know what I mean? So we should make it even worse. Like, not only did you get taken down, but you also lost a point.
Jay Petrie, our man on the spot. He's with fantastic. The stats. Sherdog associate editor. If you don't read his Fight Facts column, punch yourself in the face and then start reading his column. But he pointed out that Magomed Ankalaev got away with 3 very obvious fence grabs in his fight, and that was literally the next fight after this.
Yeah.
In terms of inconsistency. And you know what? Ankalaev's fight, not to revisit it, but that's a fight where Krylov came right out the gate and took him down immediately, and it, at least for me, put a whole different complexion on the fight than what I was expecting. And Ankalaev put a stop to that by just starting to grab the fence.
Yeah, and to fairness to Krylov, while it's probably unlikely that he would have got a submission, if he got a takedown on Ankalaev, submission is his game. Like, that's probably his best attribute. That's where he's got a whole bunch of stoppage by submission. Like, while it's probably unlikely, you never know. Like, he might have got a submission. So yeah, you're right. That could have saved the fight for Ankalaev if by getting not getting taken down or just. Even if you get a takedown, you might land a different way than you would have if you didn't. There's a lot of factors to grabbing a fence, which is obviously the positive of having a fence is the ability to see through it. You didn't have the Pride days where you'd fall through fall through the ring, and you have to push it, or they get tangled in the ropes, and you have to reset it and stop and move. And there's the benefits, but the negative is it's grabbable. I mean, the ring was the same way, but. Unless you're using some kind of plexiglass or something, which I know they tried and it hasn't worked. Let's talk about the X's and O's real quick of De La Rosa versus Silva before we move on. Silva's she hits hard. I mean, she's got a great clinch game. She was just so much stronger than De La Rosa.
That was the biggest surprise to me.
Yeah.
I expected that to be even, or even De La Rosa to have a slight advantage there. I think they're both bulls. But I clearly just underrated Mayra Bueno Silva's pure horsepower or overestimated De La Rosa's a little bit. But yeah, absolutely, Silva was the stronger woman when they got hands on each other. Yeah,
and we saw that with the damage that she did. I mean, it looks like she might have a broken orbital, and it was really, really bad. Other thing about De La Rosa, and I said this on the preview, she's pretty one-dimensional. She can't get the fight to the ground. She's going to lose. I've seen some improvement in striking, but it still has a very, very long ways to go. What did you think of her striking game? Did you see improvement at all?
Not especially. I didn't see much in the way of improvement. She can throw a variety of strikes. She has decent power, but her footwork is still poor, and she's just it's kind of slow and labored. and I'm not sure why. She seems awkward striking. It really hasn't caught on to the point that it does for some other fighters. I don't know if that's something that'll ever change, but it could stand to improve.
Yeah, she's still very young, so there's a little bit of a pass, but I mean, she's got a lot of fights now in the UFC. Like, we need to see improvement. Maybe she needs to change the scenery. Maybe she's too comfortable as she is.
Well, she just barely changed. Well, not just barely, but I mean, she moved from, I can't think of the name of the team that she had been training with, but
she did change.
Isn't she out at Grudge now?
Oh, is she? Oh, I didn't even realize that.
I'm hoping somebody will come.
Yeah, you're probably. I believe you.
I believe she changed camps within the last 2 fights.
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
Maybe
even a change of camp in most cases is not an overnight fix.
No,
so
absolutely not.
We'll see some improvement.
Yeah. Before that, so we talked about how terrible the card was. There was one high point, and that was the fight that we thought would be the high point. It was a fight that has a significant relevance in rankings. That was Pedro Munoz versus Jimmy Rivera. What a fantastic fight. Like, everything you could have asked for. These guys were banging it out. While Pedro Munoz won, it was not a bad showing by Jimmy Rivera at all, in my opinion. What I want to talk about, though, and obviously you know what I'm going to talk about, it's going to be the calf kicks. But how it's basically like a phenomenon at this point, because think about this for a second. Think about the shots. Now, I know you were putting on Twitter that Jimmy Rivera is not a knockout artist, and I understand that. We actually said that in the preview. Like, he's got. I think he has stinging power. He doesn't have fight-ending power. Obviously he does. I know there was some early knockouts, but I mean, generally speaking, he's not a big one-punch guy. But he can sting you. He can hurt you. He's going to hit you, and he's going to back you up. That wasn't the case. But what I thought was amazing is he landed so many power hooks while Munoz was landing the calf kicks. And think about trying to explain that to your non-MMA friends, that one guy keeps punching the guy in the face with power shots. The other guy starts kicking his leg, and the leg is going to give out first. And if this was a boxing match, Jimmy Rivera won it, and won it pretty convincingly.
Oh, yeah.
But it was not a one-sided fight, but there was no controversy. It was a 30-27 scorecard. And,
yeah, 2 minutes into the fight, I was not feeling comfortable with my pick of Munoz. It was such a tense kickboxing match. And Rivera had already tagged him a couple times, more or less cleanly. Some had glanced off. There had been some serious near misses. And I was like, this is going to be the fight where 36-year-old Pedro Munoz, just that top gear slips a little bit. Rivera's going to catch him this round. And even if Rivera doesn't have one-shot knockout power, if he can hurt you and then jump on you and keep laying it on, he absolutely can finish people.
Sure.
I said, this is over. But by the end of the first round, Munoz had found the rhythm a little bit, and those kicks were already really starting to tell.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I thought it was a great performance by Munoz. It's like his boxing, he lost the boxing match, but his chin is absolutely incredible. Regardless of Jimmy Rivera's punching power, he needs to get credited because he doesn't even back up when you hit him. He doesn't even seem like he got hit. He's not even fazed by it. He has his mission. He knows what he's got to do. He was backing Jimmy up to that like outer rim where Jimmy didn't have much area where he can go much further. And then when he got in that range, he went down to that calf. And I remember watching Jimmy Rivera land big shots. And if you're watching with your family or friends, whatever, you're watching the fight and the guy lands a big shot, we go, oh, you do that. Everyone has the same reaction. I was doing that to the calf kicks. Like, Jimmy Rivera would hit like a 3-punch combination. Everyone would land perfect. And Pedro Munoz would respond with the calf kick. And I was like feeling that calf kick more. Like, oh, that must have hurt. And did you get a chance to look at his leg?
It was a mess.
Oh, it was like the swelling was like changing direction where it was going.
Oh, and like even by mid-second round, his left kneecap was black and blue just from like something starting to pool there. That was a mess.
I hope he's okay.
I hope he's okay. It's telling that the current and recent former fighter in the booth were so uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Like Felder and Bisping could not get off that topic, and you could just tell they were kind of cringing in their seats. That is one thing I will always love about having current and former fighters on the commentary booth.
They understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jimmy Rivera's toughness, like no one could, after watching this fight, no one could ever question his stuff. Because we've seen guys get leg kicked and the fight's over.
Fight's over. Either it's period over, like I fall over and this thing is done, or it might as well be over. But just a half hour ago, we're talking about Jairzinho Rozenstruik just not pulling the trigger. Rivera was trying to end this fight until the end of the fight.
He really
the
was.
The third round might have been the best round. Sensational fight.
And he came out. I remember at the very beginning of the third, they wants to give him that hoorah. You want to win this fight. You got to knock him out. And he came out hopping and throwing everything he had. Now Pedro Munoz, we talked about his chin, absolute legendary. The way he just marches down his opponent based on his chin is besides the damage he can do, like how tired he's going to get you because you're unloading big shots and it's having no effect. It just keeps coming. I think about it, it's like Tetris. When you're playing Tetris and you're moving the blocks, but the higher you get up, you got to move it super faster, and then it keeps building up. No matter how fast you build it up, it's going to hit the top. Like that's what I feel like when you're fighting Pedro Munoz. Like you get in a panic because he's keep coming, and you're like, no matter what I do, these things have no effect. It's just getting higher and higher. Like that's Pedro Munoz.
And just slightly off topic, what kind of roll of quarters must Cody Garbrandt have had in his hand?
Yeah, I know, to even have even affect him.
Yeah, and beyond affect him, it was a candidate for knockout of the year. And we talked about this on the preview.
No, you're thinking
no.
You're thinking of Ascenso when he knocked out Ascenso.
But he hurt. Right. Thank you. Sorry.
He hurt Munoz. No, he hurt Munoz, and that's when they both started opening up with the shots, and Munoz knocked him out.
Yeah. I was misremembering that.
I get it. Little short guy. Yeah, I get it. Short bantamweight who fought Cody Garbrandt, but he did hurt him. Another thing that Munoz's scramble ability, like Jimmy Rivera when he took him down, and we talked about this on the preview, is his ability. Like he might not stuff your takedown, but you're not going to hold him down. It's like it's holding a grease pig. He's got to get up, and he did it again against Jimmy Rivera, who was his last fight or maybe 2 fights ago. His last fight, I think it was his last fight, was against Cody Stamann, a very good wrestler who got taken down and struggled to get up with Jimmy Rivera. Like Jimmy Rivera was able to hold him down for a big portion of the time. Not Munoz.
No.
What do you want to do with Munoz next? He called for a fight for TJ Dillashaw.
I actually like that just fine.
Everybody's called for a fight with TJ Dillashaw. Sandhagen called for a fight, and everybody has.
Everybody has. I like it for Munoz. Munoz has the opposite problem of Gunn. Gunn's fought nobody because he's just barely come along. Munoz has fought everybody. He's fought everybody in this top 15 that's even remotely available. I actually, if they can make it happen, I actually like him versus Dillashaw.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I mean, that division, we've talked about this before. That division, it's hard to make a bad matchup. I still like the idea of maybe Frankie Edgar against TJ Dillashaw. Give him the big name. Should be a winnable fight. Should favor Dillashaw. Like that's the matchup I might want to do if I'm bringing back Dillashaw. I don't like the idea of an automatic title shot or anything like that, especially how cramped up the division is. So with Munoz, I always try to find the picture that would line up also on the calendar, and saying Dominic Cruz, counting on Dominic Cruz to have a quick turnaround or having a 3 to 4 month turnaround is never a good idea. But I like the idea of Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny. Now, hold on, by the way, guys. Don't read into that. I was just throwing Dominic Cruz out there first. I wasn't suggesting Dominic Cruz is my pick to win. You can find out my pick this week when me and Ben preview the show. So make sure you check that out right here on Sherdog Podcast Network.
Jay brings up, what about Munoz versus Jose Aldo?
Like we just said, you can't make a bad matchup.
Can't make a bad matchup.
Yeah. How funny would it be where, and Jose Aldo's not the kicker. No, Joe. In fairness, we're comparing two different styles.
Right.
Pedro Munoz goes to the calf when Jose Aldo hasn't been a kick. We've seen a little bit. He's kind of came back a little bit. The kicks have come back a little bit, but not like the WEC days, the early, the title run. But his was the classic.
Whip it at your thigh.
Yeah. Marco Huas, Pedro Hizo thigh kick, which is so funny. We think about how innovative that was back then. When first time we saw Marco Huas taking out Paul Varlan's with leg kicks, chopping it down. They say chopping down the tree. How crazy to think that if you just went down another foot, how quicker that tree would have got chopped down. It'd be different chopping down with an axe and with a chainsaw. Anyways, I'm assuming they probably already gave the awards. There's no brainer. Munoz and Rivera's fight of the night.
Oh, it's the only good fight of the night.
Do we have the award? I'm assuming.
Let me look and see if we have awards yet.
Well, while you're doing that, okay, so obviously it was the fight of the night.
Ooh. Here's all you need to know about this card.
Okay.
Fight of the night, Munoz versus Rivera.
Okay, let me guess the other two. So there's two performances. To me, just by default, you have to give it to Ronnie Lawrence. You're shaking your head.
No, there's only one performance of the night bonus. It did go to Ronnie Lawrence. They only even gave out one. Wow. Dana White, Uncle Dana's like, fuck all of you. I'm keeping the other 50 G's.
That's it.
That's snow for my driveway. Peace. We'll see you next week. Only one performance of the night bonus.
Wow. I mean, yeah. Gee, that's it. Maybe, hey, you know what? Maybe he's feeling generous and he'll give an extra one next week. Or, I don't know. Track down, who was the guy? Julian Arosa with his flying knee knockout from, was that last week or 2 weeks ago?
He threw the flying knee knockout. Like,
didn't get anything.
Didn't get a bonus just because there was so much crazy stuff going on. I want to say that was just last weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, last week or the week, whatever. Send him the money because, come on, that guy got screwed. Before that, Alex Caceres versus Kevin Croom. Alex Caceres won unanimous decision. This was the fight I was most confident in. Early going, I was like, oh, man. But Kevin Croom is not good. That's the only thing I'll say about the guy. He's not good. He's extremely sloppy. He has a crazy, grueling style where his style was, I'm going to come at you with no technique, shoot from a mile away, turn into wrestling scrambles, and I'm going to tire you out. And he did tire Alex Caceres out. The problem is he tired himself out even more.
Caceres, just that veteran poise. You can see in so many situations that Kroom was burning 3 times as much gas as Caceres was, even while Caceres was still winning the round. But for Kroom to even put Caceres on the back foot and force him to react, he was having to burn so much more gas. And for a guy in Caceres whose problem has often been that he's too relaxed and just lets fights get away from him or lets his opponent dictate how the fight's going to go, even if it works against Caceres' strengths, this was, again, even with the level of competition where it's a guy who might not be UFC level, fantastic performance by Caceres. Just to be that relaxed, to win the rounds, and to, for the most part, dictate how the fight went.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree a little bit on that he dictated where the fight was going, because I agree that it was a good performance, but I don't think he dictated where the fight was. I actually think he actually let Kroom decide where it was. There was moments he could have used more lateral movement. The only difference is the skills between these two guys there's such a big gap that it didn't matter. That even though this is how you want the fight to go, I'm so much better than you. I'm going to win these battles anyways. That's how I felt that was. And especially in the third round. Especially in the third round, because if you remember, he hurt him on the feet several times. And at that point, he should have been losing lateral movement, but he wasn't. Kroom still got chances to grapple with him. And I'm like, why aren't you pushing away, lateral movement, pot shot, and I'm jabbing, and then land a quick shot or a step in knee, a high kick. You could put him out. And he still let Kroom close the distance and turn it into a wrestling match.
I see your point there, especially in the third round, and I probably just overlooked that because he was tuning him up so badly when it went to the floor that maybe I forgot that Kroom was the one who wanted it there in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't think Kroom is UFC level, but he's 1-1 in the UFC. I'll tell you right now, he's not making my cut list. I think to me, you kind of have to lose at least 2 in a row before you make my cut list. But he's not UFC level. So I said that the highest highlight of the card was Rivera and Munoz. We both agree. I'm assuming pretty much everyone agreed. I think another highlight of the card was Thiago Moises in the fight against Alex Hernandez. Moises is making, and we talk about this all the time about their age, he's making leaps and bounds of improvement from fight to fight to fight. And we talked about this, and I know I picked Hernandez. I think you picked Hernandez too. We said we saw improvement, but I felt like Hernandez would still be like too high, a jump. And I think we even said the rematch a couple years down the road, that's when again, well, that wasn't true. He leaped over him. It was a really good performance from Thiago Moises. What did you think of him?
Oh, completely agreed. I had a pretty good night picking fights tonight. We ended up with 9 fights on the card. One of them was a draw, so let's toss that one. Nobody predicted a draw. On the rest of them, I went 6 for 8.
Nice.
On the other one I got wrong. I disagree with the decision, so I'm going to be bitter about that in a minute. The other one was this one. This one, I was just dead wrong about how this fight played out. I expected Hernandez to win, and I think it's because I underestimated like you say, the leaps and bounds that Moises is making between fights, not just in his individual skills and how he strings them together, but even physically. I expected Hernandez to be faster and more powerful. He still is. I mean, Hernandez is a hell of an athlete.
Sure. But he wasn't faster than him.
He wasn't faster than Moises, and he was not especially overpowering to them on the occasions that they were trying to wrestle or grapple or they were in the clinch. I expected Hernandez to be able to bully him.
Yeah.
And he didn't. But yeah, Moises just boxed him up. He was just quicker.
Yeah. So a couple of things that stood out to me. So now one thing about Hernandez, he's so young and he is on a nice run in the UFC already. You think about the names he already has on it. His last 3 fights, Michael Johnson, which the win hasn't aged well and hasn't aged well in a long time, but that young in your career, it's still a pretty tough out. Followed by Bobby Green, who's always a tough out. And now Alex Hernandez. That's a good run.
Yep.
So that stands out to me. But also the X's and O's of this fight, I felt like Hernandez was given, without realizing, he was giving Moises what he wanted. Moises wanted to sit back and wanted to just counter him and kind of sit back off that back leg and explode. And he was, Hernandez was attacking and was kind of, he was landing just beyond the reach of his punches. And when Moises was coming in, he was landing on the power shots where you're starting to generate power. If you extend too far out, you lose power, but you kind of catch too much, you don't have enough power yet. You kind of catch it in that mid. That's really where you see your knockouts, where it's not all the way extended. And that's where Moises was landing. He was landing hard. I also love, that he was, not only was he countering with combinations, but he started throwing, he had a quick high kick. And remember, the best part of his game is his grappling. And he didn't even need it tonight. And then the way his confidence built in the 3rd round, he really turned it up in the 3rd round. To me, it just overall great performance. And he's the guy that before I might have been doing like that, looking away from, kind of throwing a little shade. Now I'm like, this is the guy that I'm putting a little star next to his name. I'm looking forward to the next time I see him fight.
I think I picked against him in all 3 of those fights, Johnson, Green, and Hernandez.
I think I did too.
Clearly, I just need to come around, and he is making visible improvements. It's a little less than a year ago that Michael Johnson boxed him up good in the 1st round. Johnson was the guy that was making Moises, miss by 2 inches and then coming back and stinging him with the counter. And he's a different striker now than he was, barely a year ago.
Yeah. So it was a good night for young fighters, but one of the young fighters kind of ran into that veteran lesson, kind of pump the brakes, not yet. And that was Sabina Mazo versus Alexis Davis. Alexis Davis won a decision. Alexis Davis, we both did not like the line. We both said that she should not be a almost 2-1 underdog. I called it my upset special night. I think you might have did too. I know you picked her to win.
Mm-hmm. I picked Davis to win. I don't know if I specifically named it my upset special, but
betting wise, it would be.
And it's rare. Like I'm not an analyst. I'm not a chalkboard guy. It's rare that I see a fight as clearly as I saw this one and just have it play out exactly like I saw it. But even as soon as the names were announced, and I knew it had been a while since Alexis Davis had fought, but I hadn't looked back and seen, oh geez, it's almost 2 years. It's like, oh man, you know what? Davis is going to eat a couple of jabs and a couple long kicks, and then she's going to run right through Mazo like a truck and, just bully her. Because Mazo was underpowered, just physical strength-wise, at flyweight. And, it didn't translate up to bantamweight. And I'm ready, and it sounds weird to say this about someone who she looks like a fitness model. She looks like a personal trainer, but she's kind of a minus athlete. She's slow. She's not explosive. She's not terribly strong for, like her build and her frame. She's not landing head kicks on UFC level flyweights or bantamweights. And the people who've beaten her in the UFC have taken advantage of her strength-wise, Marina Moroz and Alexis Davis, and people like JJ Aldrich that just cannot do that still lose to her.
Yeah. So she has some natural things just from her physique. The extremely long legs is always good. She can really use her range. So I would never tell her to not kick because that would be stupid. I mean, look at her game. Look at those legs. You have to kick. She just needs to not throw naked kicks. She needs to kind of learn how to hide them a little bit, which when I was doing the preview, I thought she was kind of doing, but I didn't see this stuff. I saw her really focusing on boxing and then throwing a kick, not mixing them in together. I like that she's just touching. I like that. I like that she's trying to establish range. So there is some things I like about Mazo that I saw. What I don't like is and it's super obvious. I hate when you give a blanket statement. Like I hate when I do this, but it's a very blanket statement. Like her ground game needs improvement, specifically her scramble ability. She's got to understand when either to fight through a takedown attempt or to basically Pedro Munoz it when you hit the ground. The canvas is lava, as my kids play, the floor is lava. Like, start acting like that. Don't be throwing up submission attempts. Not against a crafty veteran like Alexis Davis. That's exactly what she wanted. She didn't feel threatened by the submission attempts at all. In fact, like, she wants that. Like, it would have been a lot worse if you were trying to scramble. You were very confident in the underdog pick. I was very confident. It was one of those ones where this jumped out. I've been on a nice little run on my underdog picks, my upset specials. This was an easy money one. Not easy money in that it would win, but that if you're a bettor, that this line was going to be way off. And a lot of that has to do with just looking at record. That was just a look at a record thing and not digging deep into who they lost and how they lost. Anyways, before that, obviously the performance of the night went to Ronnie Lawrence. He thrashed Vince Cachero. And it was one of those ones where if you went running with your friend and they're a long distance runner, you stay with them for a mile, then the gap gets bigger by mile 2, and the gap gets bigger by mile 3. By mile 4, I'm taking the bus. You're still running, That's how I felt like. There was a big gap in skill, and every minute went down, it just kept growing further and further, and Lawrence was just looking more and more dominant. I liked Lawrence a lot. What I saw on the Contender Series, I'm doubling down. Now, this is Vince Cachero, but are you with me? Like, this is someone that I thought he looked spectacular.
Lawrence looked fantastic. My only thought by middle of the second round was, is Cachero going to wear Lawrence out? Is Lawrence going to start looking tired? But nope,
No.
Cachero was the one who started flagging first. Obviously, Lawrence got the finish, which was kind of unexpected. Lawrence could have cruised, but he was still looking for the kill in the third round. Super impressive performance by Ronnie Lawrence. You and I both thought Lawrence was going to just chew him up. That Cachero as this hyper aggressive. I mean, I made the comment. I didn't do it on Twitter, but in the Sherdog Slack, Cachero is like a 2004 Hawaiian fighter fighting in 2021, and I meant that as a compliment. I love it. Like, he is just come forward, hyper aggressive fighter, but it was just like feeding a log into a wood chipper faster.
Yeah,
that he just kept running right at Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence wrestling was so impressive tonight. The way he was changing. He dropped down on the leg, take you down. He started go to a front headlock as he came up, drop back down on the leg. He always had him changing up with high low, high low. I like the variety. He at one point he did a lazy lateral drop. He did a half. I don't know if you remember this. He was actually behind him doing a half Nelson, which you'd never see actually. And he did just to control, but there's something natural instead of reaching first. He went with a half Nelson. Suplexed him at one point. Like, he was just that was really great. But what also reminded me of, we talked highly of Jamal Emmers in I believe his last fight was against Cachero. I know that was Cachero's last fight. This looked very similar for someone who we were very high on. Lawrence did the same thing, and then Lawrence was able to put him away at the end.
And Lawrence did it at Cachero's weight, his actual weight.
That's another great point. Yeah, so Lawrence said afterwards that he's a better striker than he showed, and actually, from what I've seen of him on the Richardson, I agree with that. I actually think he's a good striker, and he didn't really show that tonight. And I think a lot of that has to do with Cachero's style. It's just a tough fight. No matter what, you're gonna be fighting off your back foot. It's hard to win.
He took what Cachero gave him.
Yeah,
and we talked about that.
You have a big lead in your wrestling. Take it. Before that, this is the fight that you were very upset about: Dustin Jacoby versus Maxim Grissom. Dustin Jacoby won a unanimous decision. Grissom was not missed weight for this fight, first time in his career. I'm going to give him a little bit of pass because he has so many fights. This is close in the decisions. You're very staunch on Grissom one.
I'm not even that staunch. I was just bitter because it cost me in the pick'em, but it was a close fight. Just Grissom, I thought had a very pretty dominant first round, and not a 10-8, but certainly a much more dominant round than Jacoby had against him. And so I was just kind of, you score it, pride style. You look at the whole fight, but no, like I'm not that mad at the decision. It was a close fight.
Yeah, I'm okay with any decision. I think I tweeted that. I said I actually, my exact tweet was, this has split decision written all over it, and then it didn't go to a split decision.
and honestly, if one guy is going to get, a little bit of a raw deal, the guy that didn't even try to make weight.
Yeah, I saw someone else tweet that too. So I don't remember who it was. Someone else tweeted like this, and they're like, "Hey, close fight, get the guy who didn't miss weight." So I scored the first round for Grissom, second round Jacoby, and I gave the third round to Jacoby. But I did pick Jacoby, so I might have been leaning that way. I made decisions 9-6. Take away, both me and Ben are in that, so take away ours, it would be 8-5. So either way, extremely close. Means one person.
8-5 for whom?
Oh, so 8-5 for Jacoby.
Okay.
But either way, very close. It means if you took 3 of the 5 scores on the Grissom fight, it could easily would have been a unanimous decision for Grissom. That's it. We've covered all 9 fights. You want to get to the fun stuff?
All right, let's get to the fun stuff.
All right, so guys, let's start with the cut list. So the cut list, I already mentioned it. I got 1 name on it. Do you have any names?
I have 0.
Okay.
So I'm even letting Cachero have another shot. So
okay, that's the one.
Want to try to talk me into it?
Nope. So the way we do the cut list is we make our own independent cut list. This is, and what we mean by cut list is people we don't think deserve to be in the UFC anymore, taking up spots of somebody else. If you make both of our lists, you are on the official Shillen and Duffy cut list. I had Cachero. He's 0-2 in the UFC. He's actually lost 4 out of his last 5 fights. But he is entertaining, and I'm assuming that's the way you went with, right?
He's entertaining, and I'm fine with him being on the should never have been signed in the first place list, since he was 1-2 in his last 3
Yeah.
before being signed. But basically, he's 0-2 in the UFC. Once is on short notice out of his weight class, and both times he's fought guys that we both see as probably future top 10 fighters. For all we know, he's a top 15 bantamweight. I don't think he is, but there's no way of knowing. After these 2 fights.
You know what? You said I could try to talk you. To put him on the list. I think you talked me to take him off the list. I'll take him off the list. So either way, he wasn't on the official list.
His cut list is always longer than mine. Like Keith, the Pawtucket Scissors Shilling always wants to just cut all these people. I'm too nice.
That's it. But you know what? You always grade the card worse than I do. I always give it a better grade than you do.
Yeah. Well, we might agree tonight. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's go to the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and the Bears, this is a stock market reference if you don't understand it. Bulls is when things are going good, the market or stock, it's a bull stock. That means it's on the rise. When it's going bad, it's a bear stock. That means it's gone the decline. We can pick up to 3. We do it hockey style, 3, 2, 1, 1 being the best. We just did a negative. Let's do a positive. Let's do the Bulls. I'll let you go first, man.
Okay. Bull number 1. Pedro Munoz. It was the fight of the night. It was the only good fight of the night, or the only, really rewatchable fight of the night, at least. That level of good. You avenged an old loss. You stopped the skid for yourself. You reaffirmed yourself as a top 10 fighter and, maybe a guy who needs another look at a title shot. Couldn't be much of a better night than Pedro Munoz had. Number 2, Thiago Moises. All the reasons we said, making substantial improvements from fight to fight. He looked great tonight. He beat somebody that you and I both picked him to lose to, and he beat him in pretty uncontroversial fashion. With the possible exception of welterweight, lightweight is the hardest division to break into the top 10 of. Any fighter is in heavyweight is 4 wins away from the top 10. Welterweight is more like 8. Just ask Leon Edwards. And lightweight is much closer to that. But Moises, he looks like a future contender. And I would not have said that even just a year ago.
No,
and that he's still just 25.
Yeah, I agree. He looks great.
Yeah, great night for him. And number 1, us, because the card is over. We win.
There you go. I had a somewhat similar list. My number 3, even though Ben doesn't think he deserves to win, this is more about a career turnaround, and that's Dustin Jacoby. And what I mean by this is a guy that was once in the UFC, got cut from the UFC, actually left the sport in MMA for a long time, has returned. Not only did he return, he got himself a win on the Contender Series, which he was a surprise pick for the Contender Series, and actually is now 2-0 since his return to the UFC. Just the overall changing. If you went back 5 years ago and said Dustin Jacoby would be returning to the UFC and doing so well, I think we'd all be laughing at you. Or saying, who's that again? We probably would have forgot about him.
Before you give your top one, can I add just a quick comment to that?
Sure.
Even though I picked Christian to win, and even though I thought he won the fight, I am happier that Jacoby won because I think I know what Christian's ceiling was even if he won tonight, whereas I am now excited to see Jacoby's next fight.
Okay. My number 2 is Ronnie Lawrence. We expected him to have this type of performance, but people are going crazy on Twitter. He's kind of like one of the new kids on the block. People are excited about him. So Ronnie Lawrence. But my number 1 is the same guy you had on your list, and it's Thiago Moises. When we go from picking against him to suddenly be like, this looks like a top 15 guy or in the very near future, was a really good night. Let's go to the Bears. These are guys who did not have a good night. I'll start, and I'll actually go with Jacoby's opponent, and that's Maxim Grisham. This is the whole weekend. First time ever missing weight. So while he's had such a long career, he can never say he never missed weight. And then he ended up taking a loss, close loss, but took a loss. Not a good weekend for him. Number 2, Sabina Mazo. She was a favorite. Had a lot of hype. She got, I don't want to say ran through, but lost significantly to Alexis Davis. She really needs to improve her ground game. And my number 1, it's got to be Jazina Rosenstruck. This guy did absolutely nothing. He's done nothing in 2 of his last, big fights. I can't see people being too excited to see him. I don't think he has got a lot of fans left. So Jairzinho Rozenstruik is my bear for the night. Who are your top 3 bears?
Mine overlap yours pretty closely. So just in the interest of variety, Sabina Masso is definitely in there. She is now, even though she's incredibly young, at least at this point in her career, she's kind of a known quantity, and that's not a death sentence. You know, Roxanne Modafferi was unathletic and underpowered. I mean, she remains a minus athlete, but she was always kind of underpowered until well into her 30s. So that can change, but right now the book's written. Mazzo's not a threat to break into the top 10 or 15 in either of these weight classes. Got to go Jairzinho Rozenstruik for my next one. Yeah, I mean, you can lose fights at heavyweight and come back from that. You can't really lose the mystique of being one of the scariest dudes on the planet. It's almost more important than straight wins and losses, because every heavyweight loses eventually. There's too much chaos. The people are too big. Everybody has power, except for Marcin Tybura. You're going to lose a fight. But if you lose the mystique of being a guy who can end the fight at any time, that's tough to come back from. And right. Rozenstruik has lost it at this point. Yeah. Like, he lost a terrible fight, and he just gave Gane exactly the fight he wanted. He never even pushed him out of his comfort zone.
That's right.
Number one bear is COVID-19. This card had 14 fights on it a week ago. It had 12 fights on it 3 days ago. It lost 5 fights. We limped through the door with 9 fights. And some of the fights we lost were fights that we had every right to be excited about. You know, we lost some of the better fights on this card, and even some of the more lopsided ones. Just seeing Angela Hill style on Ashley Yoder would have been more exciting than some of the lopsided fights on this card. So, that's a bummer, and I'm not really complaining about that. I find it encouraging when fights are scratched because somebody's cornerman tested positive for COVID. I need indications that the UFC is taking this seriously. So I find it encouraging, even if it's disappointing in the moment. And their new strategy is kind of just to push these fights 3 weeks down the road anyway. So I'm not mad at it, but man, it butchered this card.
Yeah. And then we keep our notes and just throw it in the preview 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, makes the preview real easy.
That's right. Let's go to the grade. This is our last question. And what was your graded card? I'll go first because I have a feeling I might be a little nicer than Ben. So I'll go first. And I might be in that nice. So I'm giving it a D. The reason why I'm giving it a D is the other thing we're going to say about only was one stoppage. Even that one stoppage was in the 3rd round. So not intending that sense. The only reason why I didn't give an F, I thought Thiago Moses, kind of breakout star. Ronnie Lawrence, really good performance. And then, of course, the Pedro Munoz versus Jimmy Rivera fight. That's if I'm giving that fight a grade by itself, it's an A. So kind of on the curve, it brought it up. So I say overall it's a D. What did you give it, Ben?
I'll give it a D minus.
You wanted to give it an F so bad.
I wanted to give it an F, but it can't fail completely because even if the main event, like I said, even if the main event was terrible, at least it wasn't also a robbery. We got one good fight. A few people did some impressive things. I learned a few things. I learned that Thiago Moises is, better than I thought he was. Jay Petrie, Sherdog Associate Editor, the man with the stats, the facts, and the figures. One, he tells me to give it an F on his behalf.
There you go.
For two, you want a crazy stat from the stat man.
Sure.
This is the first event in UFC history in which every fight went at least to the 3rd round. Wow. Like the 3rd round at least started in every single fight. Obviously, that's since they started having timed rounds.
Sure.
So your single-digit UFCs are out. But in the 27, going to be 28-year history of the UFC, the first card ever where every fight at least went to the 3rd round. That is bananas.
That is crazy. I remember there was the UFC card when they used to have the names, and it was knockout in a single fight was a knockout in that card. Remember that one?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, there we have it. We have recapped all 9 fights in what we believe the most comprehensive recap show there is. Me and Ben will be back this week. We'll be previewing the upcoming pay-per-view card, we have 3 title fights. It's probably a little longer and our previews are pretty long anyways. It's gonna probably be a little longer than usual because it's, as of right now, there's 15 fights on the card, including 3 title fights. There's prelim fights that have long implications. I'm assuming next week's recap will be longer than usual because, we like to spend a lot of time in the main event. Well, we have a lot of significant fights on that card. So because of that, we'll end shorter than we usually do. Right now, the clock says we've been doing this for 1 hour and 25 minutes. That's actually including the countdown clock. I don't think we've ever closed up this quick before. So, Ben, are you feeling proud, or are we cursing ourselves next week when we go like 4 hours?
I'm proud for the moment. Before we log off, I just want to say, if he's still there in the comments, Mr. Bruce Bogtrotter, I applaud your choice of name. That's a great Matilda reference. It's very rare in the works of Roald Dahl that you get an overweight character who's a sympathetic figure or a hero in any way. As kind of a husky guy myself, I can relate. I want that chocolate cake. So good on you, Bruce Bogtrotter.
I have no idea what character Ben is talking about, but anyone who listens to the show, you're a friend of ours. You guys have it. Make sure you check out Sherdog.com, all the great things. Also check out all the other shows on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. We'll see you next week.